Dear Father Simon and the Ever Merciful Collective, I seek forgiveness for an event that took place a few years ago now. I work as a GP at a surgery in the northwest of England, and our practice is housed within a building that we share with two other practices. As the largest of the three practices, we have the first floor to ourselves, whilst the ground floor accommodates the other GPs, as well as the other services such as physiotherapy, a dentist, dietary, a pharmacy, and all that kind of stuff. Like most GPs, I call in patients using the computer call system, which alerts the patients via a large screen in reception. I think everyone will know precisely what Dr. J is talking about. At the time in question, I was fortunate to work in the first room you come to, thus avoiding long delays caused by patients shuffling down corridors, going the wrong way, or generally getting lost en route. On this particularly fateful day, I called my patient, a not quite elderly but older than middle-aged gentleman, and waited. Didn't take long for the knock on the door, and he entered along with a small child who would have been about 2 to 3 years old. Now, Father Simon, it's not uncommon for adults to bring preschool children along with them for the consultations, and I don't usually mind, but it does add an extra dimension to the consultation, and this was one of those cases. As a parent myself, I know how difficult it can be taking your child somewhere for an appointment that you have yourself. It usually results in clear directions from the parent. Sit down, keep still, be quiet, read this, and so on. But this gentleman issued no such commands and, rather annoyingly, didn't seem too bothered about the behaviour of his child. In fact, the little boy rampaged around my room like a small tornado, doing all the things that children of his age would choose to do. In my experience, that typically involves pulling out the drawers to check what's inside, usually paperwork and my lunch, climbing on the examination couch, tearing up the paper roll that is used to cover the couch, and most annoying of all, jumping on all the weighing scales. I'm not sure what it is about weighing scales in children, but they're like a magnet. This annoying little child did all of these things non-stop and seemed intent on being as disruptive as he could possibly be. I was totally distracted, and in the end I had to resort to asking the child firmly to stop what he was doing and sit down. Something, that's not a northwest of England accent, I realise, but it's just my kind of doctor getting cross. And in the end, I had to resort to asking the child to stop what he was doing, something I hardly ever have to do, but in this case, I could think of nothing else. Parents are generally quick to be embarrassed and control their children, but not this man. My irritation with him and with his child was incredibly high, but as a highly trained professional, I was hoping that it wasn't too obvious that I was seething. Eventually, the consultation came to a close, and I gratefully said goodbye, and he opened the door to leave. And it was at this point that two things did not happen. The child did not attempt to leave, and the man did not attempt to take the child with him. At this point, I mentally replayed what had just happened, and a few clues dropped into place. The lack of engagement between the child and the man, the lack of parental or grandparental control and discipline, and the fact that there was absolutely no family resemblance between the man and the child. These were all clues I should have picked up on before, but I had made an assumption after another assumption about their relationship. It was now clear to me that the child was not the son or even the grandson of my patient, nor was he even a family friend. In fact, the child had absolutely nothing to do with him at all, but instead had simply run in from the waiting room when he saw the door open. I followed the gentleman out of the door, with the boisterous toddler in tow, to hopefully reunite him with his real parents. As I entered the waiting area, it was quickly obvious to me that there was a lot more commotion than usual, and I soon realised that this was because the practice manager had launched a full missing child search, because the child had been missing for at least 10 minutes. The building had been put on complete lockdown. Staff were guarding every exit. Nobody was allowed to leave. This was also no longer confined to just our patients on our floor, as the lockdown had spread to include the other two surgeries, the physiotherapist, the podiatrist, the dentist. The whole building was shut down. As I stood in the middle of the chaos, the toddler spotted his mum. There was a very emotional reunion, and the guards on the door were told to step down, and things returned to normal. In hindsight, I suppose I should have noticed the fact that the man wasn't the child's grandfather, but in my defence, I would say it's not unusual for a child to not look identical to their grandparents, and he could also have been babysitting the child, so I really couldn't tell. Anyway, the forgiveness is needed, clearly not from the child who had a lovely time destroying my consultation room, not from the patient who, after all, didn't question the fact that a child had entered the room at the same time as him. Apparently he'd thought that the child might have been mine. presumably on some Bring Your Child to Work Day initiative launched by the NHS. But really, he should have said something. I also don't seek forgiveness from the parents of the child, who frankly should have kept a closer eye on their unruly offspring. However, obviously, I do seek forgiveness from everyone else in the building during that consultation, especially those in the dentists on the ground floor. Who wants to spend a little longer in the dentist than they need to? Anyway, I await your judgment. Well, you see, I think I know which way this is going to go. Dr. J was just... You can understand how that confusion would arise. Coincidentally, they arrived together. It sounds like another sitcom in the making. Let's see what Bobby makes of this one.
It certainly does. It's difficult, isn't it? Because you've got two kinds of people in the same room. Both of you don't want to say anything. And I think there are two kinds of people in the world. Ones that will speak up quite quickly, and those that are too embarrassed to and don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable.
The patient obviously thought that the kid was with the doctor.
Well, yeah, I say. So two people assumed. So you've got two. It's not just the doctor, it's the elder gentleman as well. But of course, the nature of maybe the appointment meant all sorts of things. So I think you're kind of forgiven, but then I decided, no, you're not forgiven. You're the doctor. You have to maintain, obviously, professional standards.
And you would say, Dr. J would normally say, could you not control your child? In which case, then the patient would go, nothing to do with me, Squire.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. What's reassuring about this? So I'm going to say, I'm not sure if I'm going to give what I am going to say. Isn't it great that the system worked? They were on lockdown, that everyone was on it. So it was a great rehearsal. So good things came out of it, I think. But actually, I'm going to say, Dr. J, you're not forgiven.
She's getting harsher and harsher.
I'm not. I've forgiven
dear.
over 50%.
Yes.
I'm saying, Dr. J, you should have spoken up. You're the grown-up here.
Brother Matthew.
Well, my favourite kinds of confessions are these kinds where you hear the story and you think that could have all been solved if you just said X. And obviously if she just said, is that your kid? Can you get him under control? He's ripping up my paper thing that I put on the top of the examination table. And he said, oh no, it's not mine. Then it would have all been solved. But because we're all so very British, we just go along with it. Let's try and ignore the rampage that's going on in the corner as he's jumping up and down on my scales. And also, how do you have a lockdown and no one in that room knew that there was a lockdown? Amazing. So I am going to forgive just because I like that kind of story.
Simon.